I say walk a mile in my shoes, but clean them out before you give them back.
Hey, Pops.
Good morning.
It's 3 in the afternoon.
Oh, well, then good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How goes it?
It goes. I watched last night, we watched Spike Lee's film, The Five Bloods, and I highly recommend it. It's very appropriate for what's going on today. It's about 4 black soldiers returning to Vietnam, allegedly to look for the remains of a brother who got killed in the Vietnam War, a 5th black soldier. But that's really a cover story because they know there's a bunch of gold that belongs to the United States that was buried there and they want to retrieve it. But it deals a lot with present day issues, as Spike Jonze always does. And I think the main actor in it probably is going to be up for some kind of an award.
Yeah, if the award ceremonies ever happen next year. Okay, so we're gonna get to current events in a bit, but I wanted to start off a little light, a little easy breezy. So we got a request after last week's video to open up the comments for some questions. So going forth, if anyone has any questions for Fred, burning questions that you need to know the answers to, leave them in the comments, or I'm sure everyone knows me who's watching personally, so just hit me up. But to start, I have a question. Dad, if you could be anywhere else right now, where would you be?
I don't want to be anywhere else.
That's not true. That can't be true. You're in Stratford, Connecticut.
Wherever you go, that's where you are. I take myself with me. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, if you go to Europe because you need something new, you have to experience something new, as you're bringing ruins to ruins. In other words, you're bringing yourself to wherever you go, so why bother going? It is nice to travel, open yourself up for new experiences, see how others live. Travel broadens, as they say. Not just eating a lot of pizza, but travel can also broaden you.
So where would you travel to?
Oh, I think if I could get on a plane today and someone gave me a ticket to visit, it would be Portugal.
Same.
I've never been to Portugal, and I think Portugal would like to see me.
Oh, you think so?
Yes, I keep getting letters from people I don't even know, from Lisbon, Portugal, all the time. When are you going to come and see us, Wojciech? After all, you have to remember that many countries gave various gifts to the world. Portugal gave us the anchovy. Without Portugal, we'd never have anchovies for our pizza. But you young folks don't even know what anchovies are. You think pizza is something you use to put a pineapple on.
So Mom showed me the other day a book that you put together on racism, because when you were a professor, you put together several anthologies, you edited them. Can you talk about this book on racism?
Yeah, there were turbulent times back then, as there always seem to be turbulent times. And so with my good friend David Burrows, a professor that I met at Rutgers, we decided to edit an anthology on racism with fiction, nonfiction stuff, dealing with the whole issue of racism. Racism goes back to our earliest days. Then many years later, I worked on another anthology on Black literature, and I had the pleasure of working with a wonderful Black poet. And we did that all together too. So yeah, I've sort of looked into that area.
So what are some examples that are included in this anthology? What do they touch on?
Would you mind if I read you one little thing?
Not at all. Go right ahead.
Okay, this is a poem, and it'll sum up a lot. That's why I want to read it. The poem is by famous Black poet Langston Hughes, and it's called Theme for English B. It's an imaginary poem. It's an imaginary narrator who's a Black student, and he's addressing a task set by his teacher to write the usual essay that all students write in freshman classes. So, theme for English B. The instructor said, "Go home and write a page tonight. Let that page come out of you. Then it will be true." I wonder if it's that simple. I'm 22, colored, born in Winston-Salem. I went to school there, then Durham, then here to this college on the hill above Harlem. That's Columbia. I am the only colored student in my class. The steps from the hill lead down into Harlem, through a park. Then I cross St. Nicholas, 8th Avenue, 7th. I come to the Y, the Harlem branch where I take the elevator up to my room, sit down, and write this page. It's not easy to know what is true for you or me at 22, my age. But I guess I'm what I feel and see and hear. Harlem, I hear you. Hear you, hear me. We two, you, me, talk on this page. I hear New York too. Me, who? Well, I like to eat, sleep, drink, and be in love. I like to work, read, learn, and understand life. I like a pipe for a Christmas present, or records, Bessie, Bop, or Bach. I guess being colored doesn't make me not like the same things other folks like who are other races. So will be my page be colored that I write? Being me, it will not be white, but it will be a part of you, instructor. You are white, yet a part of me, as I am a part of you. That's American. Sometimes perhaps you don't want to be a part of me, nor do I often want to be a part of you. But we are, that's true. As I learn from you, I guess you learn from me. Although you're older and white and somewhat more free, this is my page for English B.
Thank you so much for sharing. Do you know when that poem was written?
It was copyrighted in 1951.
So what do you think that poem says about this day and age today?
Well, I think it's interesting because it's a reconciliation. It's saying, I'm not white and you're not black, and yet we're both Americans, so I can learn from you and you can learn from me. But if I'm going to be true to myself, I can only really write about me and what I'm undergoing, which then, to me, suggests exactly what's happening today.
Can you show me the book that you worked on?
Well, I actually did two different times in my career. These are the two of them. One's on racism and one's mostly on literature.
What's the one that you're holding in your left hand? What's that called?
This is called Afro-American Literature, an introduction. I did it with the marvelous poet Robert Hayden, with David Burrows, and myself. The three of us did that one. And
what made you interested in this topic?
You know, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what.
I know you've done anthologies on mythology and
interest. I don't know. Interest, perhaps because of my Jewish heritage. I was interested in other people that also suffered by being picked on for their background, ethnic, religious, color, and so forth. So I guess maybe that was part of it.
How do you feel? Because I know the hot topics of the week, at least on my social feeds, are changing all the time. But now it seems like the thing that's come up in the last few days is the debate over whether or not we should remove statues of Confederate soldiers. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's a very interesting topic, and you're going to get various points of view, but let me sum up quickly. When I was in the Army, I was at a base, an Army base in Virginia called Fort Lee. That was named in honor of the commander of the Southern Armies, General Lee. The winner of the war fighting for the North was General Grant. There is no Army base named for him. There are 10 Army bases in our country named after Southern generals. 10. A number of people getting upset by this or tearing down things. I guess the most dramatic thing that happened this week was NASCAR, which is filled with conservative people, Trump supporters and so forth. They announced no more Confederate flag can be flown. One guy was so upset by this, one of their famous drivers said, I'm not going to enter races anymore. So they said this was like one of the most momentous things when this right-wing group is going to do it right. Now think about this. You can tear down statues of this, that, and the other. Do you realize the state of Mississippi, you know what their flag is? Google it. It's the Confederate flag. They're going to, Are they going to get rid of their state flag or change it to something else?
They should.
Well,
Um,
you say that. You know.
Can you tell the story of what happened to you in Fort Lee?
Yeah, I went to Fort Lee. I was very young at the time. I just joined the Army right out of high school. So I think I was in Fort Lee, probably I was 18. I was no more than 18. 17 and a half or 18. So now Fort Lee is in Virginia, famous base. It's been there for a long, long time. And I had a weekend pass. I could leave the base. So I got on a bus, local bus, and for whatever reasons, I just walked to the back of the bus and sat down. And the bus driver said, "You can't sit there." I said, "Why not?" Because that's for colored. It's the word they use back there. He said, "That's for colored. You can't sit there." So now I don't know history. I don't know anything, but something in my gut kicked in. And I said, "You can't tell me where I'm going to sit." So I said, "I'm on an Army reservation. I'll sit where I want." He didn't say a word, drove on. We got out the main gate, stopped the bus, said, "You're in Virginia now, up front or off." That was in 1947.
I've seen from thankfully, a very small percentage of people in my social media communities, not really understanding, or it sounds like they're not really understanding, but they're saying like, why are people getting riled up and rioting and ruining property and military tombstones? And it just sounds like it's like their white fragility coming out, and they're just so like, their concern isn't about the brutality of Black people in this country. Their main concern comes from property being destroyed. What would you say to those people?
I would say what James Baldwin said, destroying things and all of that sort of thing is just an outpouring of outrage. And of course, those who are all set, which is to say, don't have to live the life of the oppressed, if they're white and they're reasonably happy and financially set, they don't understand it. And yes, looting is bad and rioting is bad and so forth. But you know what? Protesting has to go somewhere. And yes, there will be some bad apples that do bad things. But as James Baldwin said, it's just an expression, an outpouring of everything that's all pent up to smash things. And you smash things where you are in your neighborhood. Yes, it's counterproductive, but that's what you do. You break things, you smash things, and that's your way of hitting back. And that's what's happening. And don't forget this, the people that are objecting pick on that incident and another incident. But for the first time, and this is the protests are making it, the protests are not just about one bad cop killed one Black man, and there was no need for that. A lot of this now is time after time after time, the police are using military tactics. They're using tear gas, stuff that they don't even use in our own armed forces anymore. They've been militarized, trained with military equipment and so forth. And I hate to say this because I'm a strong union supporter. The policemen's unions have supported them whenever they got in trouble. They never get removed from their jobs. They have people, like the guy that is now being indicted for what happened in Michigan. He has like a dozen complaints about him. They've done nothing about it. So for the first time, the brutality of the police is being made very evident. Remember, a lot of policemen, they thought everything would be cured by policemen wearing body cams. Now they discover a lot of bad apples, and the police department turn off the body cams when they go after someone, so there's no record of it. But with social media and cell phones, they can spot it.
Have a message of hope?
Yeah, you should always have a message of hope. I have to say this, that the outpouring that's taken place now, as someone pointed out, has been more massive than anything we've had in this country for Black protests before. When Martin Luther King got killed, that horrible thing, we have a much bigger turnout for this. So, and people that weren't very happy with the protest said, well, 3 or 4 days it will be over. It's 2 straight weeks now, and there's no sign of it ending. So yeah, it's putting a tremendous pressure for change. What will come of it, we're going to have to wait and see. But the pressure is there. And when there's enough pressure, there will be change. That's what got us out of the Vietnam War. Enough pressure from enough people saying enough is enough.
What else does your casebook on racism include?
Well, you go into, here's the important thing, and I was thinking about this, and I sort of expressed. There was a Swedish sociologist named Gunnar Myrdal, way back in 1945, I think it was, came to this country and did a study. He called it an American dilemma, and he pointed out that if you are, say, Asian, if you're Asian, you go your way. People say, well, Asians, they study hard, they work hard, they maybe we don't like Asians, but you know what? They're no problem, so let them go their own way. If you're from India and you're here, well, you got your own. So what he pointed out was that all those different backgrounds, you have your own cultural heritage to live on. If you're born in America, trace your roots back, you're from slavery, you've lost your cultural heritage. You've been indoctrinated, embedded in a white way without any of the privileges or help that whites had right along. So you don't have that thing where an Asian could go back to all his roots that are still here, all his practices, his culture. I wanted to say this because it deals with how we opened when we talked about our heritage at the beginning. The easiest thing for a young person growing up today to say, well, I'm from the North, so yeah, there was slavery in the South, bad, but we had nothing to do with that. We never believed. Yeah? Okay, so try this one, John, here. According to survival records, the first slave was the property of the schoolmaster of Harvard. Yale funded its first graduate level courses and its scholarship with rents from small slave plantations it owned in Rhode Island. The scholarship's first recipient went to found Dartmouth. A later grantee co-founded New Jersey, now Princeton. Georgetown's founders, prohibited by the rules of their faith from charging students, sold slaves on plantation profits. Columbia subsidized slave traders with below-market loans. Before she gained fame as a preacher, Sojourner Truth was owned by the family of Rutgers' first president. My school, Rutgers, where I got my PhD. So right from the start, the North was fully responsible for slavery. It was about, and this is seldom ever mentioned. When you ran cotton plantations, you had to fund those things. And what they did was they borrowed money from the northern banks, and then they paid back when they sold what the slaves had harvested. Without that northern financing, there would have been no ability to run slave plantations. So the North was fully involved in slavery.
So on a more modern note, how would you address white people who say, well, I'm not racist, so like I have nothing to do with this. People who don't understand that it's not about them as individuals, it's about systemic racism in its entirety.
Well, I would only urge them to read up more about background. And I think basically you're going to have to confront not just the background, but how you can change it. Society functions best when people get along. And I have to tell you, the single best way to end that kind of hatred, any kind of hatred, is simply to know people that aren't like you and to find out. And guess what? You're going to find out that, if you cut them, they bleed. If they're unhappy, they cry. If they're happy, they smile. If they love, you love too. We share a lot of things in common.
That was a great answer. Thank you. Do you have any final words?
Yes, I do. I miss you.
I miss you too.
No, it's a horrendous time, but remember, I think it was Elie Wiesel, someone said, whenever there is turmoil and so forth, there's a chance for change and there's a chance for growth. So take advantage of what's going on to make it better.
That's the first time on Fredside chats whenever I've asked you if you have any final words or a message of hope. That was the first time it's been an uplifting message. So thank you.
You like it?
I
made
loved
that up.
it.
I made it up. It's all bullshit.
Touche.
Is that it? We're saying goodbye?
Oh, you didn't do the kiss goodbye. Well,
For all humanity.
maybe just do it with the right arm.